So I'm going to talk more about the Andrew Farago situation. For those of you who didn't watch the previous video or haven't heard, there is a very prominent person in the comic book community, Andrew Farago, who was filming his house guests at his birthday party. He was filming them using the toilet. He hid a camera in the bathroom, and some of those guests included children. He has been arrested. He has admitted to the crime. He's had his devices seized. And I was kind of waiting a few days to see what happened because there has been a lot of discussion in the comic book industry about creeps in the comic book industry and harassers in the comic book industry and people taking advantage of their position in the comic book industry. We had the whole situation with Warren Ellis where he was, sleeping around using his privilege or whatever to sleep around. But my understanding was that was consensual. We had the situation with Ed Piskor where there were allegations, and apparently whatever happened, I believe it was consensual and of age, but Ed took his life because he was harassed by these people online. And I'm going to go back to that in a minute because there's nobody really talking about the situation with Andrew Farago. Right. And I've said before that in the comic book industry, there are certain people that are part of a protected class. And he definitely is one of them. Now, there are a few people that have said a few things here and there, but Comics Beat put a very brief post up, and it was not Heidi McDonald because, again, I'm going to show you Heidi McDonald is actually pretty good friends with this guy and his wife. That's my understanding. Bleeding Cool put something up, but I don't think there were any comments on it. And I know Heidi was actually deleting, or somebody at Comics Beat was deleting some of the comments on the post. And I think I'm more shocked that the comic book industry isn't reacting more to this. Right? I mean, this is all the stuff they've been saying. This is all the stuff they've been saying for the last, 5-10 years now. You're not allowed to be a creep in the comic book industry. We don't want you in the comic book industry being a creep. Well, Farago knows a lot of people, and he's an outspoken feminist, and he is very, very anti-CG or anti-conservative. He's spent most of his days when he wasn't writing his books or running his museum attacking conservatives or conservative-leaning people or anybody that was even somewhat sympathetic to conservatives being banned from the comic book industry. He spent all of his days attacking these people, just like Heather Ontos and so many others. But they're not throwing him under the bus like they are some of these other people because he's part of the in crowd. So I am telling you, as somebody who worked in the comic book industry and who traveled in some of these circles and knew some of these people, the reason the comic book industry is in the state that it's in right now is the comic book industry protects its own. There are a handful of people that control the flow of spice in the comic book industry. And Farago definitely was one of those people. And they're not going to throw him under the bus because people are going to start to look at you and be like, hey, you've been to a lot of Andrew's parties. You've worked with him for years. There were no warning bells going off. Well, no, he's a male feminist. He says all the right things. He goes after the right wingers. He does all the things he's supposed to do in the comic book industry. You remember this pledge that was going around? And this was being pushed by, I think, people like Heather Ontos, who tried to cancel John Byrne, by the way, which is idiotic because she tried to cancel John Byrne's new X-Men comic because she called John Byrne a transphobe and a homophobe, and he actually did create the first openly gay Marvel character, North Star. And he just asked some questions on a message board. Kind of boomer questions, but, that was enough to put him on the wrong side of things. And this is John Byrne. Like, you have no right to cancel John Byrne. You are a Johnny-come-lately. You just showed up about a decade ago when the comic book industry started to decline. You don't have any authority to cancel somebody like John Byrne. But we've seen it happen time and time again. Yeah, this anti-rape pledge or whatever they had. I mean, when you have to sign a document saying you're not going to harass people. Now, I don't think that on this pledge there was anything about filming your friends and their children's genitals, because that's what Farago did. But they did say to actively call out our friends and peers even when no one else is watching. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was the fifth missive on this, and they're not doing that. Again, I think the shock is kind of wearing off, and I think they also know that, like, oh my God, this is it. This is the end of any moral high ground that we had, because Farago was one of the loudest voices in comic book cancel culture. If there was somebody, if there was a what do they call it, a digital lynch mob, if there was a digital lynch mob, Andrew was there, man. If it was against the right wingers, he was there. And it turns out that he is actually one of the biggest creeps in the history of the comic book industry. I mean, I don't know how far the rabbit hole is going to go, but they seized his devices. He was filming at a party where there were children. It could get very, very, very disturbing. But again, what should we expect? This is an industry that cries foul when school libraries don't want to carry books that explicitly show genitals and stuff in it, so it's kind of like, this is kind of where we're at with the comic book industry right now. But you want to know why I noped out of the mainstream comic book industry, or stopped trying to get work in the industry? It's not because of shit like this, but it's because of the clique mentality. There is no getting in. And if you get in, you have to play by their rules. Scott Snyder, who's, writing the biggest book on the stands right now, was, backhanded a few times by people that were nobodies. I mean, they were nobodies, and they tried to keep him in line. These people got in like 10, 15 years ago, and they've had a vice grip on the comic book industry, which has led to its rapid decline. And every once in a while, you get somebody who's able to break out, like Scott Snyder. But I have to wonder how much farther maybe he would have gotten if he didn't listen to these people. They've tried to cancel Rob Liefeld. They haven't really gone after, they tried going after Todd McFarlane, I think, because of him using AI or whatever. He doesn't give a shit. He's got a toy company. He doesn't give a shit. And honestly, that's the best way to work in comics right now, is to not give a shit about your peers, because these people are your peers. You need to be peerless. You need to not have any peers, because once you become part of this peer group, they're going to try to control your career, control what you can and can't do. We were part of that. We had one of the two vetted agents in the comic book industry like 15 years ago. That guy was a male feminist. He was telling my wife what to do. I'm like, that's not very feminist of you. But again, it's control. They control the flow of spice. They deliberately throttle people who could compete with their friends. And then at the end of the day, they got freaking creepos. I mean, time and time again. So let's talk about this a little bit more before we get into it any further. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. If you'd like to listen to the audio version of Clownfish TV, you can go out to iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, this is Bleeding Cool. They put something up on it. There are no comments. Andrew Farago arrested, recorded guest with hidden camera. Police say you go out to Comics Beat. Same thing. It was not Heidi McDonald. It was Christopher Chu Tabe. I have no idea who this is. Andrew Farago reportedly arrested for videotaping party guests in the bathroom. Well, considering there are like 10 mainstream outlets that are covering it, I think it happened. Okay, so let me ask you this, and this has really been bothering me. The only reason this got out there was a police report in a Berkeley paper. And then it hit international news. It's in the freaking Daily Mail UK. His hometown paper is running it. Wellington native arrested after alleged hidden bathroom recordings. So congratulations, you're famous back home there, Andrew. But everybody knew about this for like a month and nobody said anything, which is so weird, isn't it? No, it's not. This is how it works in the comic book industry. If you're the right kind of person and they like you and you're part of the clique, they will cover for heinous shit. They will cover for absolutely heinous shit. Nobody said anything for a month. This guy was arrested a while ago. And I want to take you out to Blue Sky because I thought, well, by now the shock has worn off, right? By now the shock is worn off and people are talking about Andrew in his bathroom cam and being like, because, every time there's somebody else in the comic book industry that does anything, even remotely, possibly, maybe creepy, there's all kinds of chatter from people about, what an awful person this was. And, look at how conservatives were demonized, and they would dig up every little whatever they did back in the day because, they can, and then they chatter about it and they drag them publicly on Facebook and Facebook groups and whatever. They'd use their friends in the media to drag them. Farago, again, he was a huge cheerleader for canceling Comicsgate people, or, anybody conservative. He was there. If there was a, somebody dogpiling a conservative creator, he was there. And what's disgusting to me personally, and this is a very personal thing. So, this really bothers me. This is part of the reason why I've been talking about it. This guy did the obituary for Jesse Ham. Jesse Ham was at one point in my life one of my best friends. He died from a blood clot after taking the shot. He was only 45. Now, I hadn't spoken to him in a number of years. We had a falling out, unfortunately. But this creep is the guy who did his obituary. And Jesse, as far as I know, was very good friends with him. We were part of that Bay Area comic scene. I left the Bay Area in the late 90s. But, yeah. So this guy did all the obituaries for all the cartoonists. And, I'd like to think that Jesse didn't know. I'd like to think he didn't know. Jesse was a Christian. I'd like to think he didn't know. But, so yeah, it chaps my ass a little bit. So let's go out to blue sky. This is what they're saying about him. This is the latest on Andrew Farago. So this person does, to their credit, say gross, but also Andrew Farago should not work again. So community warning. This person, Ted Roll, talks about him. We have a couple. SJW James Bond says Farago deactivated his account, bummed out he turned to be a creep. Yeah, it turned out to be a creep. The reason they're bummed out is because, again, this guy spent all of his time attacking people he didn't agree with politically online. So yeah, they're very bummed because he was one of the biggest voices. Okay. Chuck has it. Chuck at Comic List talked about it. This person had to look up who Farago was because they never heard of him before. Upon doing more research on the subject, especially what he did, I haven't been this horrified and disgusted since Cesar Chavez was revealed to have abused women and minors. I don't know how far the rabbit hole goes. I have no idea. Now, to his credit, this is Anthony Gramuglia, who, again, is another very, very vocal critic of anybody who's even somewhat conservative in the comics space. And he's gone after us before. Whatever. Because we don't like She-Ra. That's what the whole thing was. We don't like She-Ra. But he actually, to his credit, he actually is denouncing Farago and saying, look, I didn't know, this is disgusting, whatever. And I hope he doesn't know. I hope he didn't know. This person says, I followed him here, read some of his pieces. What he did was incredibly bad and wrong. Gramuglia says, I learned about the arrest of Farago. I guess he had him on a stream like a month before. I'm frankly disgusted by his actions. I've interviewed him before, used his work as research. I'm personally disgusted. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people were saying things. Now, nobody's really saying anything now. This was a couple days ago. And I thought, well, surely there's going to be a lot of like major people in the comic book industry saying things about this guy. And no, not really. You're not seeing a lot of the big people on here saying anything. Where's the Gail Simones? Where's the, you know what I'm saying? Why isn't Heidi McDonald making a personal statement? Like, hey, I'm really good friends with this guy and holy shit, I had no idea. Because my understanding is that they were. My understanding is that they were all buddies. They'd meet up at conventions. They'd hang out together. That, you know, and look, you don't always know when your friend's a creep. But I'm thinking there would be some tells, right? Where there's some weird, like, what they do, like at Disney World, where they have the towel art, where they have like a swan or something. Did he make like little? Because how do you hide a cell phone in a towel? Do you like make it like a swan and be like, oh, look at that beautiful towel art. I'm gonna look at that towel art as I pinch a loaf, and really, it's got a camera in it. Alex Grand kind of threw him under the bus here, but not a lot of big, like, where are all the people that signed the anti-rape pledge? Where are they at? They're not saying shit, are they? They're reporting on it because they have to, but not enough people are saying enough things. But if it were somebody else that they didn't like, if it was somebody whose politics they didn't agree with, they wouldn't shut the hell up about him. And that's what's disgusting. So I did, just to compare and contrast, I went out to look for Ed Piskor, RIP. I didn't know him. He was in Pittsburgh too. I honestly did not know Ed. I think I sat behind him at a convention one time, but they don't like him. So now you've got people that are still going on and on about Ed Piskor, you know, a year after his death. Big Oz. And he had Piskor comics talking about Epstein, right? I mean, we've got, they're talking about like what happened. He killed himself. Unfortunately, they ended cartoonist kayfabe. Other people making shit comments. Hip Hop Family Tree being in they weren't happy. Hip Hop Family Tree, I guess, was in the black culture section of a bookstore or something. I will accept this because you had a normal take on Ed Piskor. A lot of people is disproportionately. So here we go. We got this guy here. If the Ed Piskor debacle did one good thing, it caused a bunch of comics professionals to show their misogyny for the first time openly. People like Greg Smallwood publicly said, I like my sex pest coworkers and their victims can just suck it up. And that's on the record forever. Where are your statements about Farago filming children in the bathroom? Right? Same guy. Happy 2-year anniversary of Ed Piskor murking himself. Sex pest down. Heidi McDonald said Piskor did nothing illegal. What he did is to violate the community standards, and the community is judging him. Where's your statement on your buddy Andrew Farago? I'm just saying. You are seeing up close and personal what the comic book industry in 2026 is actually like. This is why there's so many people yeeted from the industry. This is why we have such a lack of professionalism. This is why it feels like a club, because it absolutely is a club. Okay. And I don't expect there to be a lot on him if he does get arrested. Now, here's what's interesting though. They seized his devices. If other people, other quote unquote good people in the comic book industry were involved in this shit, it is probably going to come out. And maybe the reason they're not saying anything is just like Epstein. They're scared to death that they're going to get busted too. And what moral authority do you have anymore to go after people and get them canceled from the comic book industry? Absolutely none whatsoever, because he was one of the big shots, and look how that turned out. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.